Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is made by fans for fans, and where the content is absolutely free. And as I tell you, most weeks, guys, it's not just the pod that's free. We have the online stuff, the forums. There's even a virtual museum and all that on the website, so get yourself on there. And all the content is free. It is episode 104 of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast. I am your host, Colin Armstrong. We're running a wee bit late tonight because the IT just absolutely packed in. So apologies for that. We're about 8 or 9 minutes late on air. If this is your first time listening to the pod, we would encourage you to subscribe and get it shared on social media and let the people know that we're here. We've got over 3,000 subscribers now, so thanks to everyone who's subscribed so far. The podcast is live tonight, although we are running late, as I've just said. However, it will be available to download or stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, and Spotify. So a lot to get through this week. A great win at Ibrox yesterday for Rangers against Dundee United. First league game against Dundee United for 8 years, I believe. And obviously relationships between the two clubs have deteriorated hugely in the last sort of 8 to 10 years. So it was nice to give them a good pumping. So we'll talk about that. We'll have a wee look. It doesn't seem that long ago since our Europa League campaign of last season ended. It was last month against Leverkusen. But we're back in action this week and we're playing Lincoln Red Imps on Thursday night in Gibraltar. So we'll have a wee preview of that. And a huge game coming up for Rangers next Sunday at Easter Road. Hibs sitting in second place. So that looks like it could be a big game for Rangers. So we'll have a wee look at that as well. And a couple other wee bits and bobs. So joining me tonight, I'll bring in the guests now that we're up and running and yet another farce from myself is over. I'll introduce the guests tonight. First, we've got Ross Bennett, co-host, and he was here at the beginning with the Gersnet podcast. He's down in London tonight. How are you, Ross?
I'm a little bit frustrated, actually, Colin, because as we're running 8 or 9 minutes behind schedule, I've had to sacrifice 8 or 9 minutes of my patter. I've been working on that for a few days now. I don't know. I might do a blog instead, and people can follow that if they want to get, the real good stuff.
I'm assuming you're talking about the stick you were getting on Twitter earlier today.
I know. I've come off Twitter temporarily just because I'm spending so much time on it, and I check it about once a week, and I just had, 20, 25 notifications saying Ross's patter's shite. Okay, that's fine. I don't mind really. I'm here for the insight and the football tactical analysis rather than the pattern.
Yeah, you're the straight guy, really, aren't you? I mean, you're Ernie Wise to my Eric Morecambe.
I'm not sure I've ever been called the straight guy. Certainly not at school.
Well. Anyway, I'll be honest with you, Ross. I don't think your pattern's that bad. You know what I mean? I think it's fairly decent. It's certainly not as bad as our next guest. I mean, his patter truly is honking. And that's John McCallum. How are you, John?
I'm well. Yes. I'm the particularly straight guy. This pod seems to have taken an interesting turn where we all now claim to be even more straight than the last one. I knew it would go that way eventually. We'd end up having to. He protested too much, that McCallum. Yeah, I'm not bad. Listen, I heard a great piece of trivia this week.
All right.
Maybe everybody knows this, but I heard it for the first time this week. Only one Scottish team has ever at any time held the world transfer record. So they have paid an amount of money that broke the world transfer record at that time. And only one Scottish team has ever done that. And I heard that this week, that trivia this week. I had no idea.
Well, who is it?
It's not Rangers. It's not Rangers. So it's not a team you would expect it to be.
Let me think. Do you know the answer, or are you just?
I know the answer. I'm not just asking a random question. Listeners, write in and tell us which Scottish team you will win a week.
This is our Blue Peter moment. Answers on a postcard, please.
Do you want to know? Do you want to guess?
What decade was it?
No, the 20s. 1920s. Yeah.
Fairly even.
It was Falkirk.
Falkirk? Jesus
Falkirk
Christ.
broke the world transfer record. They spent £5,000 on a guy from West Ham.
There you go. Was it Sandy Clark?
Sandy was injured in the early 20s. That was one of his injury crises. Some guy, I think he's in a cracking name. His name was like Puddleworth. And he'd been.
That sounds a very 1920s name, to be fair.
He was English internationalist, and he had come up to Scotland to work in a munitions factory during the First World War, and had guested for Falkirk. And then when the league started again, the people of Falkirk gathered round and donated money so they could keep him. And
to be honest with you, I've lived in Falkirk. I moved here sort of mid-80s. Just as I was about to go into high school, and that doesn't sound like the people of Falkirk at all, all chipping in and putting their hands in their pocket, but there we go.
My impression of Falkirk either, I have to say, but
no, they're a bunch of miserable shites, if I'm being honest with you, but there we go.
History books. And anyway, they bought him for £5,000, which broke the world transfer record, and I think they held it for about a fortnight or about a couple of weeks, and then Sunderland bought somebody.
Beat them. Yeah, there we go. Top content, John. But we have
nothing to do with Rangers, but what can I tell you?
But we have to up the stakes in our content, you know what I mean? Because we're under P with Graham Spears' new pod, £2.39 he's charging, we're going to lose listeners in the barrel load, really, aren't we?
Well, that's all the Celtic supporters who listen to us. Got a new place to go.
Which, to be fair, is probably about 80% of our listeners. Anyway, let's get into it. The game yesterday, I thought Rangers were superb yesterday, especially in the second half. They never really looked in trouble. They've created this, or they broke this 114-year-old defensive record. Few players in amongst the goals, Roof and all the rest of it. So lots and lots of positives, but a few negatives on the injury front and the tackle on Morelos, which we'll come to. So Ross, I'll come to you first. In terms of Gerrard went with a 4-2-3-1 again. He had to bring in Hollander when Balogun was injured in the warm-up, but it didn't seem to impact on the performance too much. In terms of the overall performance in the lineup, how did you feel it all went yesterday?
I think it was a very, very nice way to reacquaint ourselves with Dundee United. I found it very enjoyable. I think it was probably our strongest performance of the season, in my opinion. And a lot of the things in the last few games that haven't quite clicked and we haven't been clinical enough, it all really seemed to come together yesterday. The lineup, I was glad to see Leon Balogun back on the starting lineup and back on the team sheet, because he looked so impressive at the start of the season, and I was sorry to see him go out for injury. So I was looking forward to seeing him come back, and obviously a great shame to lose him in the warm-up. But from Gerrard's comments after the game, it sounds like he felt some tightness, and we thought best not to risk him, as opposed to, like he pulled a muscle, he tore a muscle during the warm-up. So if it's just that he felt some tightness and he didn't want to risk it, then that's absolutely fine. And by the way, having big Philip Hollander on the bench, a Swedish international, to come in and fill in and take that spot, it certainly shows the strides that we've made in terms of squad depth, that we're not worrying about Russell Martin and David Bates. It's Leon Balogun drops out and Philip Hollander's there to fill in. And he did incredibly well. Again, mopping everything up. Him and Goldson have been so strong, contributing to the defensive record that we've managed to break and set this year. The performance itself was excellent. I think pretty much everyone on the park, gave a really, really strong performance. Obviously, a few lads going off injured early doors who didn't really manage to contribute too much, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But like I say, everything just seemed to click. Everything seemed to gel. Dundee United were poor. I'd like to mention a WhatsApp I got from my brother 3 weeks ago, who said that Dundee United are looking very, very strong and will be the team to watch this season. They've not won a game since then, so it's cracking punditry. They were poor. They're not a good side. They don't have good players. Lawrence Shankland came on and didn't really threaten at all. Nicky Clark, as much as I like what he did when he was at Rangers, he's not a prolific or the kind of striker that strikes fear into my heart. So all in all, a really, really successful afternoon.
Hard to disagree with that, John. I think I would go along with most of what Ross, if not all of what Ross said there. I certainly think second half it was probably our best performance. Everyone looked keen, and was buzzing about with no problems getting in behind them. It was another game, there's been a few games this season when we could have scored a lot more, and it felt like that yesterday. We had opportunities to score a lot more, and I think Gerrard was right in his post-match comments when he said that a team's going to get a battering fairly soon, and it kind of feels like that. But at the other end of the park, we've broke this record, this 114-year-old defensive record, 7 games without conceding. Now, you said on a show a few weeks back, as we were building up to the new season, that you felt defensively we were sound, and it was up front that we needed to improve. We conceded as many goals as Celtic last season, and if we continued in that, we would be there or thereabouts if we scored more goals. So it took you saying that for me to sort of, actually he's got a point, because I thought we maybe could have still done with another centre half at the time. However, the fact that it seems that the defence has stepped up again, they've went up another notch. 7 games without conceding, that's quite incredible. And as I said last week, it's put us in a position that if you get 1 goal, then there's a good chance you're going to win the game. So in terms of the record and how the defence is playing overall, what's your thoughts?
It's always nice to get a record. I wasn't aware of the record until kind of midweek. But I don't think we've actually sat back and given the team enough credit. To go 7 games without conceding a goal is actually, it's quite something. You would assume that our team was sitting, with playing a very defensive type of football, but in actual fact, our football is very expansive. It's very, very attack minded, which I think then is even more creditable. And I also think that when you consider that we're still missing our first choice keeper now, as the weeks go on, I think there would maybe be a question mark over whether McGregor does walk back into the team when he's fit, because McCallum hasn't put a foot wrong, and looks, every time he's asked to do. He flapped at one cross yesterday, but anything he's asked to do, he does, and he's done well, and his distribution is excellent. I would say his distribution is actually probably better than McGregor's. So when you consider that, when you consider that the second centre half, Goldson being first choice centre half, I think without a doubt, the second centre half has switched around a little bit through the season. Then I think it's probably all the more impressive. But it's a team game, and to delve into the big bag of cliches I carry around with me.
You got a big bag of cliches, John?
A big bag of cliches. And
give us a cliche.
Liberally tonight. I think that the truth is we are defending from the front, and that's what's been impressive about us this season. That in actual fact, when you saw it in that game yesterday, actually, whenever Rangers lost possession, we are closing teams down very, very quickly. That's a hard-working team, and I think one of the reasons that teams haven't been scoring against us is because they don't get the ball. I can't remember a period of sustained pressure that Rangers have been under in the league since the season started. There must have been, Aberdeen must have had 10 minutes at home or something, but I can't remember it. I don't recall that. So, and I think that's because of the way that the attacking players are playing when we don't have the ball. They are closing space. They are rushing the opposition and forcing them into making mistakes. They're not letting them build. So it's enormously creditable. It certainly makes winning games an awful lot easier if you don't concede goals. There you go, another great cliche. And we need to just keep doing it, because ultimately I think all the great Rangers teams were built on a good defence. And good defending, whilst it's maybe not as aesthetically pleasing as good attacking, it is something to behold. If you have that team there, and we've got a settled back line, Barisic and Tav, you don't even need to think their names are on that starting lineup. Goldson's there as well. Goldson strolls through matches. We don't appreciate Goldson enough. I've had this chat on the Gersnet website on more than one occasion. Saying to people, Goldson I think was our man of the match. Goldson was our player of the season I think, his first season at Rangers, and he was massively overlooked because he does the simple thing. He's got a great turn of pace. He reads the game well. He's a commanding presence. And our defence is built around him. I mean, our two fullbacks are basically attackers. And when you've got the right sitting midfielders in front, covering and closing space, it's a joy to watch it. And it allows then the offensive players to go and do what they need to do. So, it's great, Colin. Long may it continue.
Yeah, I would take what you say about Goldson as well. He probably is undervalued and underestimated a lot of Rangers supporters. I think we have a support that highlights people's flaws rather than their positives. There's a lot of people. One of my mates yesterday, he's just been negative all season after every game, especially after the Livy game. And so I sent him a text yesterday when the game finished. I was like, sack Stevie G, we only beat them 4-0. And he did actually come back with a genuine negative. It was, I'll try and dig it out, but I really was actually flabbergasted. You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, he genuinely found a negative in that game.
As a support, we're hard to please. And I'll be careful how I say this without sending everyone over to Graham Spears' podcast. But I actually think some in a way, the fact that there are no fans at Ibrox, not so much for the game yesterday because we scored early. We scored in whatever it was, 10, 12 minutes. We scored early. And after that, we absolutely dominated. So I don't think that was a huge issue. But there have been games or periods in games where I've felt certain players would probably have got the collective groan from a full Ibrox. And the fact that there's not a support there just now means, I think, a player like Hadji, who actually contributed, he set up 2 of the goals, heavily involved in 2 of the goals yesterday, actually heavily involved in all 4, but the assist for 2 of them directly. But he's still a player that it doesn't always come off for him. He's still a player that, it's still not quite happening for him every single time. And he's the kind of player that every now and then you could imagine that the support just starting to grow and if a pass doesn't come off. And the reason I mention that is that Goldson, I think, doesn't always get the credit he deserves, because I still think there's still some in our support who prefer Marvin Andrews to Jean-Alain Boumsong. They want a centre half who will take bodies. I think one of the reasons Katic is so popular is because he's absolutely no nonsense. He can play football, but if it's a 50-50 ball, Katic will take everything out of the way. And I still think a part of us quite enjoys that, is looking for that in a centre half. Goldson is not that type of centre half. He's a much more cultured player. And I think that's why he's maybe not always getting the plaudits he deserves. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
There you go. Ross, coming back to you, and hopefully you'll have a big bag of cliches as well. After the game, Stephen Gerrard was quite gushing about Stephen Davis. Now, Davis he's had a sort of up and down start to the season, and I've seen lots of supporters write him off and say, the legs have gone and all that kind of thing, and he doesn't have it in him to go through the full campaign, and we'll have to manage the amount of game time he gets. And then he goes and plays 2 internationals and comes back yesterday and has an absolute outstanding game. And not only did he play 2 internationals, he's also just equalled Pat Jennings' caps record for Northern Ireland. I believe it's 119 caps. And it just strikes me that, part of me feels that we missed out on the best Stephen Davis, because I think he was at his peak when he moved, and I think Southampton maybe got the best of him. But I do sometimes think he's a very, very underrated player, even when he was at his sort of, he wasn't at the age that he is now, and he was at the club the first time around. You just got the feeling that he was someone that was kind of undervalued a wee bit by the supporters. How do you feel about Davis? Because I think his best days are behind him. He is getting to that age. But I think if you've got a young and fit Stephen Davis, there's a case to say he's the best player in the top flight in Scotland. And I think Gerrard was right to sort of keep praising him yesterday, because, as I say, he has had a wee bit of an up and down. It looks like it's took him a wee while to get up to speed, which is maybe understandable given that, he's getting on a wee bit. But yesterday he was outstanding. And I just think we have a top player there.
Yeah, yesterday was really special. It's one of those things that as he gets older, or as a footballer gets older, you sort of tend to see them shift backwards on the pitch. So he's gone from being that dynamic, attack-minded midfielder with pace and with legs and with drive and energy. As the body's got up them a wee bit, he's turned more to his brain, and he's a very intelligent footballer. And yeah, look, his best days are behind him. He's not lost the vision. He's not lost the ability to find a pass. He's not lost his composure as well under pressure. He doesn't flap. He doesn't make mistakes. So he's still got all of the attributes that make him a top-class centre midfielder, and certainly more than capable of doing a job in a championship-winning Scottish Premier League side. His best days are behind him. I don't expect to see him playing 90 minutes of every game this season. In a way, I've actually been surprised at how much he has played, but that's testament to him keeping himself in shape. I think when, obviously, we don't know the real extent of Ryan Jack's injury, and we don't know how long he'll be out for. But when he's back, when Aribo's back, when we get another centre midfielder in, which it appears is what Mr. Gerrard is after, you've then got Glenn Kamara there as well. Scott Arfield knocking on the door, who was phenomenal, by the way, when he came on yesterday. He was really, really excellent. His best performance for Rangers for a number of months. There's a huge amount of competition there, and I think, a huge amount of credit has to go to Stephen Davis for the way he's kept himself in shape and kept himself at a very, very high level of performance. And then, it goes without saying that his achievement in what he's done internationally for his country and his national team, it's remarkable. In this day and age, for an outfield player as well, obviously, Pat Jennings is a goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper might have a slightly longer career and take less toll physically. So for an outfield player to go and match that record is wonderful to see. So yeah, I don't know that Davis will be playing 90 minutes of every game this season, but he's a real asset to us. He has the intelligence to dictate. I hate by the way, the phrase quarterback. He's a quarterback of the game. That's not a football term.
Is this you bringing out a bag of cliches there?
I don't have a bag of cliches. I have a bag of insight. No, it's I don't
insight. You said a bag of what?
A bag of insight. No, look, I don't like people saying, no, he plays the quarterback role, but he does. He anchors the team very well. He gives them a very firm and very calm, assured presence, and he is excellent at allowing the players in front of him to go on and be expressive and be creative. What actually, I'm sorry if this answer is dragging on a wee bit. What he does very, very well is he facilitates Tav and Barisic. Him sort of sitting there and screening the centre halves, it allows the fullbacks to have the freedom that they need to play this system. And that's why Tavernier scored 2 in his last 2. That's why Barisic, has assists coming out of his arse. It's because you have Stephen Davis, and when the necessity arises, you have Stephen Davis alongside either Glenn Kamara or Ryan Jack, screening the back four, helping out the centre halves, making sure that the clean sheet record stays intact. And that allows Barisic and Tavernier to do what they do best, which is get forward, frighten the life out of the opposition fullbacks, put balls in the box, and get goals and assists. So I am full of admiration for Stephen Davis. I don't know how much longer he can stay performing at this level, but I also didn't expect to see him so much this season. Like I say, I thought last season he dipped towards the end, in my opinion. I thought after the winter break, he was probably one of the players who suffered the most. So I don't know that I expected to see quite so much of him, but yesterday he was given man of the match on Rangers TV, and it was thoroughly deserved.
One thing, Ross, I don't remember him having this. He probably did, and I just can't remember it. But see his ability to win the ball back now. The way he closes down players, he's quite tenacious. And one thing about Davis as well is when he wins it, I mean, he's not going to be crunching tackles and all that kind of thing, because obviously that's not his game. But he just closes players down and just nips in and gets a toe in and wins the ball back. And what he is good when he's got the ball is, as you have pointed out earlier, he's a very, very intelligent football player, and he always just seemed to do the simple thing. I think you're right. I think he sort of died a slow death last season, but that's maybe to do with the players around him. The team collectively was struggling. And speaking as someone approaching his 50s who's still playing five-a-side. You know, as you get to a certain age, you need other people to do a wee bit of your running for you. And if that's not happening, then you yourself, and I think that's maybe what's happening with Davis. You know, if the team collectively isn't performing, then he himself isn't going to be able to rise to the levels that he can reach. But this season, I agree. I think he's just been absolutely outstanding, and I thought Gerrard was right to heap praise on him yesterday. John, coming back to yourself, on the issue of Ryan Kent, he scored the first goal, and it was a great goal, lovely wee give and go with Hadji. I love the fact that Hadji nutmegged someone with a pass. You know what I mean? It's not just the fact that he's popped it through their legs and ran round the other side to get it. You know, he's basically nutmegged them with a pass, put it through. You know, Kent's twisted the boy inside out and hammered it home. Now, I was reading the Sunday Times today. Don't want to sound all posh and stuff like that, but I was reading the sports section, the Sunday Times, and Douglas Alexander said that Kent is now Rangers' main man. You know, Morelos had that crown. That crown has now moved from Morelos to Kent. Would you agree with that? Is he now sort of the main man at Rangers and the sort of focal point of this team?
Yeah, he is. He started the season so strongly. He looks dangerous every time he gets the ball. His decision making has improved enormously, and I think that was maybe the main criticism of Kent last season, was that you knew he could beat a man. You knew that he could get a cross in. You knew that he could score goals, but he didn't always make the right decision. This season, his decision making has been excellent. The positions he takes up, you know, Kent now. I mean, I haven't seen the stats. I would be surprised if Kent isn't the most fouled player in Scotland, because he's getting fouled a lot, and you know, we'll need to watch that. But he 2 or 3 times yesterday he was fouled, and it wasn't even given. And I know we'll come to the referee as this conversation goes on. But yeah, Kent is you know, he's the fulcrum now of the attack. He gets to move around. Roof is doing the kind of heavy lifting and allowing Kent to suddenly appear in places. And like you say, wasn't that a beautiful pass? And he had a lot to do when he got the ball still, but it was a beautiful pass from Hadji, and just a great goal. You know, a lovely finish. He absolutely turned the Dundee United player inside out. And Kent, I think when we all saw Kent at first, when he first came up for Liverpool on loan, there was this, you know, kind of initial excitement of this kind of fast guy who, you know, dynamic player. But you're always still wondering, is you know, is he going to be a Vladimir Weiss guy? Is he, you know, one of these players that, you know, just never quite makes it? You know, that can kind of flatter to deceive. I still wasn't sure, even this time last year when we bought him, I still wasn't 100% sure he was going to push on and fulfill that potential. But yeah, I've been proven wrong so far this season. He has looked, you know, he looked like he's very interested. There was an interesting quote from Gerrard through the week, Colin. I don't know if you saw them, when he was being asked about Kent and you know, the supposed interest from Leeds in him, and you know, he's made the point that it seems to actually have made his performances better. You know, sometimes it kind of, you know, speculation can affect a player in a negative way, but it has not affected Kent. If anything, you know, he's stepped up his performances, and we need guys like Kent when we're playing against teams that will sit deep. And to be fair, Dundee United didn't sit deep on us yesterday. But we're you know, come up against a 10-man defence, you need guys like Kent who can unlock that defence, just give us that bit of magic. And yeah, unfortunately, I find myself in full agreement with the Sunday Times on this. I think he is the main man just now, and you know, that mantle may change as the season goes on, but undoubtedly he is the main man just now. He is our main attacking threat.
Ross, talking about another attacking threat, you mentioned it earlier on about the 2 fullbacks, you know, Barisic and Tav, and how Davis and Jack and Kamara, you know, whoever's in that sort of midfield 2 allows them to push on. Tav yesterday got the second goal, you know, his 48th goal for the club. It was his 250th appearance for Rangers yesterday in 5 years. Now, to put that in context, Celtic TV pundit Michael Stewart managed 180 career appearances in 13 years. So, for Taff to get 250 and 5 is a great achievement. Again, like going back to what sort of John was saying about Goldson, is Tav maybe also in that sort of bracket, someone who's maybe a wee bit undervalued? I mean, we've had discussions with him or on him, before, and we've been critical of him in a constructive way. Some of us have questioned, I've certainly questioned his positioning at times defensively. Questions about whether he's good enough to be the captain of the club. But, looking at the positives, going forward, the amount of assists that he gets, the amount of goals that he gets, and the fact that he's still there. He came to Rangers when we were in the second tier of Scottish football. And now he's in a team that's chasing for a league title, that's been performing in the Europa League group stages for the last 2 years and getting to the sort of latter stages of the tournament last season. That's quite a progression when you think about it. Do we underrate Tav? Do we undervalue him?
Well, first things first, it's unfair to draw a criticism with Michael Stewart, because Michael Stewart
I know.
I think Michael Stewart might have been able to do more, but he devoted so much of his time and attention preparing for a spectacularly unsuccessful career in local politics. So, if Tav manages to also do that as well as performing consistently for Rangers, then I think we can class him as a success. I don't know. I think I'm much like yourself, Colin. I think we've actually discussed Tav a number of times on and off air. You have days with Tav where you think he's phenomenal, and you go, how's no one signed him for 15 million? Look at the things he can do. He'd be great in a side like Leeds. He'd be great at a Wolves or an Everton. He could tear up the Premier League. And then you have days where you're like, dear God, I can see how he was looking at being punted out of Wigan before we came and picked him up. And he's prone to a howler. He doesn't like someone running at him defensively, but he knows what his game is, and he does his game very, very well. And we've finally found a way to use it to good effect. That's because we have the players in the right positions now around him to give him the support and give him the confidence to go and do what he does well, which is playing a bit like an auxiliary winger. Do we undervalue him? I think we do. I think a lot of the criticism that's come his way, though, has been entirely justified. I think that there have been times when he's not helped himself. I think that the programme notes last season thing was naive. I don't think there was necessarily anything particularly malicious or that worrying about it. I think it was just a bit dumb. And I wish that someone from the club had stepped in and gone.
That's what I was about to say. Maybe someone from the club should have stepped in at that point and
hang on, this
maybe just been a bit too honest. You know what I mean? I think that was the issue.
Exactly. He's scored one goal every 5 games, and he's assisted a hell of a lot more than that, which is a spectacular return for a midfielder, let alone a fullback. So I think he's acquitted himself exceptionally well in his time at Rangers, which it's not been plain sailing. Think back to our first 2 seasons back in the Premier League were some of the hardest to watch that I can remember. And he was playing alongside some really, really poor defenders as well. And we're talking about a guy who can't defend here, allegedly, who is now captaining the side to a record-beating defensive streak. I think hopefully this little spell can put to bed the myth that Tav can't defend. We can all look at stats about the number of crosses that he blocks, the number of interceptions and tackles that he makes, which is high for a defender. He's made a lot of high-profile gaffes, where he lets a ball squirm through his legs and a substandard winger or a substandard striker just knock the ball past him. He makes bad mistakes sometimes, but if he didn't do that, he'd be playing for Man United or he'd be playing for Arsenal and Man City. I think in my mind, he is one of the greatest assets in the SPL. And yeah, maybe we do undervalue him. He's made it very easy to undervalue him at times. Made himself very easy to criticise. I don't believe that he's not captain material, and I think being without crowd now, you can actually hear the leadership that he displays on the pitch. He's very well respected in the dressing room. He has the ear of everyone, including Alfredo Morelos, which is very, very important when you're trying to lead a team now to, captain them through a momentous season. Tavernier deserves silverware. He has put a lot of time and effort and heart into Rangers Football Club, and I really hope that this is the season that he gets rewarded.
Yeah, I mean, I would find it hard to disagree with much that you've said there, Ross. It was a point I was going to make, that if he didn't have these kinks in his game, and that I think he is like Goldson. He has high-profile errors in him. Errors that cost you, but it all comes down to the net contribution. Is he in the plus or in the minus in that front? And he's well in the plus. The stats there prove it. 48 goals, 250 appearances. Is he perfect? No, but as you say, if he was perfect, he wouldn't be at Ibrox at the moment. So yeah, I think we do maybe undervalue him. I agree with you. I think when the criticism comes, it's deserved. I think a great captain for Rangers is someone who leads a team through the harder times rather than just the good times. And I think that's maybe an area where Tav has sort of struggled a wee bit. But yeah, I do think as a football club and as a support, we're lucky to have him. John, the third goal yesterday came from Roof. Now, we had a wee chat before we came on air. I don't think we discussed Roof. I thought he played really, really well yesterday. I have high hopes for Roof, I must admit. I thought his link-up play was great yesterday. Really hard-working player. He was even back in his own box at times, heading clearances away and all that kind of thing. And he looks to me, he looked a wee bit anonymous at times in a couple of his early performances. But he looked to me yesterday like he's really getting up to speed. He was really linking up the play well. How do you feel about Roof? I think we might have a bit of a diamond here. What about yourself?
Aye, he came with a decent backstory. He came with a decent reputation. Leeds fans all thought really highly of him. And I mean, it's his third game, his fourth game now for Rangers. So it's far too early to make any kind of judgment on him. But I felt the last time I was on the pod with you guys, he'd played alongside Itten, and I just didn't think it was quite coming off for the two of them. And he scored that day. He scored his first goal that day, and he took it well. And yesterday, I thought he looked like the guys around him and himself were now starting to get on to the same wavelength. You could see there's been another couple of weeks of training there, another couple of weeks of all getting to know each other. And I tend to agree with you. I mean, he isn't Morelos. He's a different type of player to Morelos. And there's times where, a Morelos type, a guy who's just strong and just, bullies the other team, it can be very valuable. I don't think Roof is that player, but he's a busy player. He won't give them peace. And I think he will help bring out the best in Kent, in Hadji, and hopefully others as the season goes on. I think he's quite a selfless guy. I don't think he's a guy that's going to score you 25 goals a season, but I think he's a guy who will help other players score goals. He's the kind of guy who will help us as the season goes on. So no, I've been quite happy with him. I'm reluctant to make too much of a commitment to him just yet. But you can't fault any of them that played yesterday. They all played really well, and I think you're right. I think they've probably done the research and got a good guy.
Ross, I'm glad the way it's worked out, the way the questions have worked out in the agenda, that we've come to Scotty Arfield on you, because obviously you love Scotty Arfield, and I really do love Scotty Arfield. But I being serious, I thought he was outstanding when he came on yesterday. It's probably the most liveliest I've seen him look for a while. He was running forward into space, linking up well, took his goal superbly well, and probably could have got another one, maybe two, involved in a few chances. Now, we're going to come on to the sort of only negative from yesterday's game, and that was the amount of injuries. given the amount of injuries that happened yesterday, and given the sort of level of Arfield's performance, has he now put himself in the frame for maybe going on a wee run of starts in the team?
Tough question for me, because he's not my favourite. He did exceptionally well yesterday. That's not in doubt. I mean, he actually sort of had a hunger that I've not seen from him for a wee while. The way he took that goal was fantastic. It was a really, really lovely finish, first time, not an easy one at all. Puts it just out of reach of the goalkeeper. The ball's curling the wrong way, so it's kind of heading towards the outside of the post rather than curling back in. Really not an easy strike at all, and that's a really, really difficult technique to take the ball first time on the move like that. I still think there were frustrating elements of his play. Maybe this is me being a wee bit biased against him, but
yeah,
I mean, look, there was that time maybe 5 minutes before he scored where he's through 1-on-1 and he decides to shoot from 18, 20 yards, and you go, you had another 2 touches in you there. And it turns out being quite a comfortable save from the goalkeeper. He tries to go across the keeper, which is good, but he does it from 20 yards out. You go, just take another touch. You've got so much space. You're behind the defence. I don't see him getting a run of starts, but he's done everything he needed to do to make the manager have a difficult decision to make, and that's all you can do when you're sat on the bench. Gerrard is very open about the fact that if you're on the bench, you have to work to take the starting jersey off the player who's got the jersey at the time, and that's all he can do. And Arfield actually, I mean, I can't think of a better performance from Arfield for the last 12 months. I thought he did well. I remember I was in Denmark last season at Midtjylland, and he did well then. But I'm not sure he's had as good a game in the last 12 months for us. And he did that in the 30 minutes that he was on the pitch. He's certainly not won me round. I certainly think he's declined faster than anyone else in the squad, because 2 years ago he was a key player for us. I wouldn't be starting him next time, but I do have to hold my hands up and say that was a really special cameo from Scott Arfield.
The Scott Arfield hatred, I don't get it at all. But anyway, John, coming back to yourself, as I said there, maybe Arfield's made a claim for a jersey in the next few weeks, given the amount of injuries. Now, on the injuries, it started before the game had kicked off. With Balogun, he felt something tight and felt he didn't want to risk it. Then we lost Jack. We lost Barker, and then we lost Morelos to a shocking tackle by Ryan Edwards, which we'll come into shortly. Now, on the Ryan Jack injury, one of my mates texted me today to say that two players, I think there were 2 Leeds players who were in the Scotland squad, have also now succumbed to calf injuries. Now, there was an issue last season when I believe Jack was given it was a 10k run or something like that. And Steven Gerrard wasn't happy because when he came back, he broke down. And Ryan Jack seems to be that type of player. He seems to get maybe 7 or 8 games in him, and then he's out for 2 or 3, and then he's back in. But on the Scotland thing, is that something that we should maybe be concerned about, and that the club should be maybe homing in on? Because if Ryan Jack's coming back consistently from international duty and then he's out for 2 or 3 games, surely that's a problem.
Definitely a problem. If you were looking for any kind of criticism of yesterday, the fact that 3 of our first 11 came down with strains, let's call it that. I don't know the extent of it. I mean, Barker's looked like he pulled his hamstring, or certainly he's done something to his hamstring. Balogun obviously didn't make it onto the park, and then Jack's again some sort of strain. You do need to wonder: was the warm up right? Were they? What's the training been like through the week? Barker wasn't away in international duty. Was Balogun? Was he away? Is it Nigerian? Is he Nigerian, Balogun? I don't know if he was away or not. I should know, and I don't. I apologise. But obviously Jack was.
So should I, but I don't.
Jack was. Ross will look it up quickly, and whilst I'm talking, and come on and tell us. You
really won't, eh?
But Jack didn't play on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, whenever the midweek game was for Scotland. He played the weekend game, but he didn't play then the second game. So I wondered if he had a knock. I wondered if he picked up a strain, and that the Scotland team knew about it. Scotland physios and management knew about it, and then maybe Gerrard knew about it as well. So I don't know. I agree with you. Jack does seem to be a player that just doesn't. You don't expect to get a season out of Jack. You expect him to pick up injuries just as he gets a run and starts to look like the player that everybody tells you he's going to be. He picks up a knock, and those kind of knocks he gets, those kind of strains he gets, can be 2-3 weeks before you're back, and then it's kind of starting again. So it's a little frustrating. I don't know if we can blame Scotland for that. I agree. Last season there was, for Gerrard to come out publicly and criticise the national setup, he must have been very, very angry about what happened, because those kind of things are normally done behind closed doors. There's just something about a kind of unwritten rule about how you do that. So he must have been really, really annoyed about that. He didn't. I wasn't aware. Certainly, I haven't heard him make any out-and-out criticism of the international setup this time of the Scotland team. But they must be annoyed. They must be frustrated, because Jack's an important player for us. Realistically, I think we have three natural sitting midfielders: Kamara, Davis, and Jack. And now Arfield can play there, and there's probably a couple of others that can play there if required. But I think they are the three more natural in that position. And having one of them out means, we just have the two. It does leave us a bit short. It's a kind of position where you will pick up bookings. Players will pick up suspensions through the season. It is that kind of position. So it is a worry. It's not ideal, because Jack was having a good season. Jack has started the season really strongly, and to see him limp off, it's not ideal. With a big game, probably our biggest game of the season coming up. Our two biggest games of the season coming up at midweek, and then obviously at the weekend away at Easter Road. So you really would want him there. So it is disappointing. But I'm disappointed at losing 3. I don't understand how that happens. Within what was it? Within half an hour, with 3 players off with muscle strains, and so that's a wee concern. You do wonder. Okay, what was the warm up like? What was the training like through the week? What was the story with them? Then before that could happen. But hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully they're all able to come back quite quickly. That would be my kind of big hope in this.
Ross, the final injury, and probably the biggest one in terms of a talking point. Now, thankfully, it seems like it's not that bad, but it was the tackle on Morelos from Ryan Edwards. Now, it looked like a bad one straight away, because again, we were talking before we came on air, and John had pointed out that Morelos kind of looks at his leg and then signals to the bench straight away, and then goes down in a heap. And the camera actually catches. You can literally see the stud mark in his knee, and to me, it could have been a lot worse. But Gerrard's come out after the game and said, I think the fact that Morelos' foot wasn't planted has helped him on this occasion. So it's just been an impact, gash on the knee, maybe a few stitches and a couple of days rest. And it was even suggested that he might make the squad for Thursday. But in terms of the tackle from Ryan Edwards and the referee, Clancy, one of the replays, for me, he can see it. There's no bodies in the way. He's got a clear view of that tackle. Straight leg, above the ball, on the knee, gash. Yeah, he doesn't even book him. And this again, Gerrard made the point, and Michael Stewart was bumping his gums last night more about Steven Gerrard sticking up for one of these players than the actual tackle itself. Steven Gerrard made a very good point, in my opinion, saying if it was the other way about, if Morelos had committed that tackle, it would have been interesting to see what the result would have been from Clancy. Now, we've been over this over the last couple of years about the referee inconsistencies. Yet again, you would have to say that we've come out on the wrong side of a bad decision there.
Yeah, horrible decision. I don't want to spend any more words on Michael Stewart, but you could have predicted his response probably down to the word. it's just boring from him now, and I don't think we need to waste any energy on him. It's a shocking tackle. It's a straight leg, studs up, and it's knee high. I mean, it's above the knee. It's a really, really awful. Let's be kind to the defender and call it reckless rather than violent. But there's a large school of thought out there saying that he knew exactly what he was doing. He was trying to leave one on the boy. Had it been the other way around, had it been a Morelos challenge, I don't know. I mean, it's Kevin Clancy we're talking about, and you don't have to look too deeply into his record to see his disciplinary history with Alfredo Morelos. So it doesn't fill me with confidence that the outcome would have been the same. So yeah, look, on Sports Scene last night, they're talking about how his view must have been blocked, and otherwise, yeah, he would have. I mean, Chris Iwelumo was reasonably fair last night when he said, I mean, surely he's not seen it, because if he has seen it, it has to be a red card. So I was coming away thinking he's just not seen it, and that's not good. It's not good that a referee's not seen it, but also he can't control that if a player gets in his way. But you're right, I've seen that camera angle now, which kind of fairly categorically and unequivocally shows he had a pretty clear line of sight to it. That it was studs up, straight leg and knee high, which is dangerous, which is reckless, and that can injure your opponent, as it obviously has done. One of the best hot takes I've seen on this was, but it happened really fast, so you can't expect the referee to keep up with that when it happens so fast. I mean, it's literally his job. His job is to protect the players. It doesn't matter how fast. I mean, that's like me saying Colin didn't walk up that hill because the hill was quite high. That's the whole point, right? So the referee has to see it, and the referee has to take action. I mean, I'm glad that, I think I'm right in saying that the rules still say if he'd given a yellow, then there wouldn't be scope for retrospective punishment, because it shows the referee has seen it and he's taken action at the time. The fact that the referee's not taking any action, he never gave a card, it gives the scope for the compliance officer, who, again, we don't have a great history with. It gives scope for the compliance officer to come out and take retrospective action. I think pretty much every pundit is fairly unanimous in saying that deserves to be a red card. It's reckless, it's dangerous. If Morelos gets away with missing only one or two matches, that's incredibly fortunate.
And you've got more faith in the governing body of Scottish football than me, Ross. I can't see anything happening to him, to be honest with you. But time will tell. But yeah, I think Gerard makes a really good point. I think if that's the other way around, then Morelos is off the park without even a doubt. So yeah, we'll see what comes. But I don't think anything will happen to him. But time will tell. John, coming back to you and moving away from yesterday's game, back in Europa League action on Thursday night, we're travelling to Gibraltar to play Lincoln Red Imps, who are famous for that result against Brendan Rodgers and Celtic a couple of years back. I think it was Brendan Rodgers' first game. Great story for that. I remember hearing a journalist who was covering the game saying when he arrived at the airport, he got in a taxi and he was talking to the taxi driver, and he said to the taxi driver, I am here to cover the Celtic game. Are you going to it? And the taxi driver was like, am I going to it? I'm playing. You know what I mean? And I've always kind of liked that story. But given that Celtic did have that banana skin, I get it that they turned it round in the second leg at Celtic Park. But we don't have that luxury, because of the current situation with COVID and all that kind of a thing. It's down this route of one-off games. So it's a one-off tie away from home, the dreaded plastic pitch, a team that has already, humiliated a team in Scotland. Ryan Kent claimed through the week there that the players are going to treat it like it's Porto. Is that what the players need to do? If they want to avoid the potential banana skin here, do they have to go in here with the right attitude and the right mentality?
100%. I mean, they have to be professional. They have to, this is a cup tie, and it's interesting you said there it's one-legged, so it does make it different. This becomes an old-fashioned cup tie. We're away to a team that on paper we should have no problems with, but I expect it's going to be pretty warm over there. It's the plastic pitch. And you know, they've nothing to lose. I mean, if they lose 7-0, you know, no one's going to give them they're not going to get criticised for that. You know, so yeah, you know, it absolutely has potential to be a banana skin. And I was pleased to read that from Kent earlier. That is exactly how Rangers have to approach this game. They need to go in there with the right attitude. They need to go in there. I mean, thankfully, we've played there before. I think it's the same stadium, isn't it? There's only one stadium in Gibraltar, I think, that is capable of holding games. So we've played there before. We understand the conditions. It's a different team and it's a different event. You know, over 2 legs, you always expect a team like Rangers to come through against a team like Red Imps. You know, the quality of player, the resources each team has, you know, they're not the same. But, you know, a one-off cup time, we've all seen it before. You know, the home team, they've got the home crowd behind them, assuming there'll be a crowd there. And I don't know if there will actually, but you know, they have that home advantage plus they're up for it. And yeah, you know, it's going to need, if it's not, you know, if we can't get an early goal, then it's going to need patience. It's going to need guys like Kent to step up and just deliver us that piece of magic. Because, yeah, you know, we should win comfortably, but one-off cup ties, that's not how football works. I mean, that's one of the reasons we love football, because that's not how it works. You know, you could put 11 guys in that are all part-time and you can put them up against some of the best players in the world. And for reasons that no one has ever been able to quantify, they are able to compete with them on a one-off basis. So I'm not expecting it to be too easy. And hopefully we will be professional all the way through and do the job we need to do, Colin, because, you know, the last thing we need is to be getting pumped out of Europe by them. That would be a sore one, and would, I think, set us back psychologically, don't you?
Yeah, and that's the point I'm going to cover with Ross now. Now, we have been there with these sort of, you know, quote unquote Diddy teams before with progress under Pedro. Gerrard, though, since he's arrived, he's had a good record in the qualifiers. In fact, he's got an excellent record in the qualifiers. He's got a great record in the Europa League overall. You know, he's managed to get us back to the group stages at the first time I asked him when he arrived. And last year, he got us to the group stages and then got us into the knockout stages. And I think a wee bit of a kinder draw, and that was at the last 16 we got to. Then, you know, you don't know where we could have ended up. But how important is it, you know, from a financial point of view and from a prestige point of view, that Gerrard maintains that record and gets us into those Europa League group stages?
Well, none of us have any, you know, real insight into the finances of the club, but you have to believe that the acquisitions that we've made over the summer and the lack of, you know, really notable player sales for mega money, it probably means that actually it's quite important that we go far in Europe. And I think that the group stages financially would probably be the minimum. It's probably also the minimum expectation of the supporters. You know, I remember 2 years ago, before we had that first run into the group stages, we were all sort of saying it would be pretty much impossible. And then we get there, we have a decent go at getting out of the group with Rapid Vienna and Spartak Moscow and Spanish team Villarreal. The next season rolls around and we all sort of go, that was a bit of a fluke actually. I don't know if we could get there again. Maybe we got quite a lucky or quite a fortunate draw to get to the group stages. But we do it again and we come out of an even more difficult group and then go through the last 32 into the last 16. And you're right, if we get an easier draw, you never know what could have happened. I'm not saying we would have won the thing, but we could have gone quite far. So actually now the expectation from the supporters, I think, is, you know what? No, it's not lucky. It's not a favourable draw. It's not a fluke. We should be getting to the group stages. This stage of our recovery, that's where we should be year on year on year. Gerrard has an excellent record in the qualifiers, as you say, not just in terms of matches won and a lack of matches lost, but also in terms of goals conceded. We don't concede many goals in these qualifiers, which is lucky because we haven't conceded any goals at all this season. I'm very, very confident ahead of Thursday. I really can't see anything going wrong. It would be a very, very freak set of circumstances. I think we're a much more composed unit, even than Celtic were under their first Brendan Rodgers game. Obviously, he was taken over under a wee bit of a shambles that Ronnie Dyler had left. So I think we're in a very good spot. We've got players who know what it means to go through these qualifiers. As John said, very importantly, they know the setup there. They know that it's a slightly weird place to play football. Obviously, you've got airplanes taking off and landing in the background. You've got this horrible plastic pitch. You've got 30-odd degree Gibraltar sunshine. But the players know that, and the players are used to it. The players will be professional. They've played in more difficult environments. They've certainly played against harder teams. I really cannot see this one causing us too many problems.
Well, I hope you're right, Ross. I mean, I always get a wee bit nervous about this, and I always get a wee bit nervous about Rangers when it seems to me historically that when we have a really good season in Europe, the following season it kind of crashes down a wee bit. I remember 92, 93 when we came so close to winning the Champions League. You know, the following season we were out the first round. The same when we got to the final in 2008. You know, we'd done so well, and then the following season we're out at the first knock-ins, and I just have a wee bit of the fear. I'm not saying we're going to lose on Thursday night, but in terms of getting to the group stages, I do have a wee bit of fear about that. But I'm with you. Hopefully Thursday night will be fairly routine, and we can see where it takes us. Guys, a wee bit conscious of time, so quickly look at, it's possibly going to be the biggest game of the season so far, next Sunday at Easter Road. Hibs going great guns under Jack Ross. Arguably our stiffest test to date. John, I'll come to you. And how do you feel about Sunday?
Easter Road's always a hard place to go. You know, we'll have been over in Gibraltar, so there'll have been the travel, you know, the heat, the fact that we've played the game midweek. You know, there's always, that's not true. There's sometimes a hangover from a European match, no matter how it's going. There's sometimes a hangover. Hibs will be up for it. You know, I think the Hibs thing is all relative. You know, obviously they started last season really badly. Ross came in and he steadied the ship and has kind of built on it from there. And they're currently sitting second. Now, they're sitting second because Celtic have played 2 games less. And Aberdeen, I think, have played 1 game less. Maybe 2 games less as well. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, I'm not convinced that they are, you know, they're world beaters. They lost Aberdeen at home. And Aberdeen were pretty poor. What we used to all them. They drew with Motherwell, who are currently bottom of the league. So, you know, they're not, and both those games were at home. So, you know, I think that they're missing their home crowd. They're missing their home backing. But they'll be up for the game against us. The Hibs always give us a hard game. Easter Road is one of these grounds where, you know, you can expect it to be hostile. But the fact they're not going to be fans there, again, Colin, you know, we approach it professionally. We'll beat them. We're better. We've got better players in better form. And if we approach it in the right way, then I don't have too many worries. I mean, they hammered St Mirren yesterday, but I mean, you know, St Mirren were trying to get hold of a goalkeeper 10 minutes before the game, and it was the amateur stuff. I mean, I wouldn't be reading too much into that. You know, no, I'll be disappointed if come next Sunday, you know, we've not put a couple past Hibs, and I think it. I'm not sure it's a harder ground for us to go to than Pittodrie. You know, I still think Pittodrie, first game of the season, is a harder game than Easter Road after kind of 7-8 games. So, you know, whilst you know, I don't want to sound overconfident, because that is not my natural state when it comes to Rangers. I genuinely don't see any reason why we shouldn't go there with some confidence and expect to win and come back with all 3 points. That's, you know, that's my view on it. I genuinely think that that's a game there for us to be won.
Can I just say, you sounded totally overconfident there, but we'll not go into that so late
now, whoever's on next Sunday will be cursing me.
John said we would scoosh it. There's also, Ross, coming back to yourself, there's also this other aspect kicking in now, and it's an aspect that we've talked about a lot in the show, and that's the mentality. You know, Celtic play St Mirren on Wednesday, who I'm pretty sure the SPFL have told that they've got to go and sign another goalkeeper to play in that game, and then they've got Livy on Saturday, so there's a good chance that Celtic will be top of the league by the time we take on Hibs on Sunday. You know, they'll be probably level with us on points, and maybe they'll sneak it on goal difference. So for the first time, you know, there's that wee bit of pressure to get a result, and it's a tricky fixture away from home at a ground. Again, as John's pointed out, there'll be no supporters, but it's away from home at a ground that's always difficult to go to. Is this a chance for the players to show that they can? It's an opportunity to show that they can deal with this sort of pressure.
Yeah, if they have any inclination of winning the title this year, winning 55, then they have to. This is the kind of challenge that defines a title-winning season, surely. I think we all expected and continue to anticipate bumps along the road this season, that there will be challenges. And there are some, I think, teams this season in Scotland, Hibs in particular, are stronger than they have been for a wee while. And they pose maybe more of a threat and more of a challenge. And Hibs have been in good form since the start of the season. I quite like Jack Ross as a manager. I think he's a decent manager. Hibs have one or two good players. I quite like Martin Boyle as a player. This lad Nisbet up front seems to be knocking them in. Again, seen on the sports team last night that the goal he scored yesterday kind of just bobbled off his shin and went in. But he's in the right places and he's getting goals. So they're not a bad side, and it will be really interesting to see if there is an effect mentally from the fact that Celtic take the lead. I think you're right. I think they probably will. Although, let's be fair, they have a shocking record against Livingston in the last couple of seasons, Celtic. So you never know. They're not playing overly well. They got a very strong victory over Ross County this weekend, but according to the Ross County manager, it certainly wasn't as much of a pumping as you might expect when you see the scoreline. So they're not playing overly well, but I do still expect that they probably will be top of the league on goal difference by the time we play. That the hard thing about mentality is it's not something you can necessarily coach. To be a strong character, to be resilient and overcome challenges like that. This again is where I think the lack of a crowd in the stadium is going to really help us. Actually, I think it will allow the footballers to focus on what they do best. So again, I'm cautiously optimistic. I hate games against Hibs; they just make me nervous. They give me a fear. I was, as I know you were, Colin, present at the Scottish Cup final a couple of years ago, and since then, I hate playing Hibs. So I'm not exactly looking forward to it, but I think John summed it up really well. I'll be very, very disappointed if, come Sunday evening next week, if we're discussing the fact that we've dropped more points. There's not really going to be any excuse for that mentality or not.
Yeah, hopefully you're right. I mean, I'm a wee bit like you. I get a wee bit of the fear when we're playing Hibs, but that makes it all the better when we win. I really enjoyed that victory last season when Rebo got the goal and Kent, and I think Defoe made it 3-0 on the night. So because you have that fear, because the stakes are a wee bit higher, because it's a club you absolutely hate with a passion, it makes it better when you win. So hopefully that's where we are next Sunday, and when we're on air next week talking about it, it'll all be good, and we're discussing a win rather than a draw or a defeat. Guys, again, conscious of time, so probably best just to wrap things up there. So that is all for this week's episode of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast that is brought to you by Fans for Fans. A big thanks to John and Ross for their contributions tonight. I really enjoyed that. It was a good laugh. We'll be back next week to talk about the Hibs game and the Lincoln Red Imps game, and previewing what's coming up in the following week. In the meantime, between then and now, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. Guys, as I've said all through this sort of lockdown, and there's a wee bit of a spike in it all again, stay safe, look after yourself, and until the next time, bye for now.